Now, the other guy that they're thinking of, as we talk about the markets, about plus 165, if I'm looking at Bet Online, for the first overall pick, this is Bryce Young. These numbers have gone down. There has evidently been money that has come in on Bryce Young to be the first overall pick. Young is a former Heisman Trophy winner himself. He has an 8.8 yards per pass attempt, which is 12th in college football last year out of 155. He only had 9 turnover-worthy plays, which is 40th. 10.0 average depth of target, which is in the top third of college football. 77.4 adjusted completion percentage, which is 13th. That's for PFF. 12.5 pressure to sack, which is 35th. That's a really good number there. And then 3.2 seconds time to throw, which is 12th longest in college football. Young comes with one question mark, right? If Bryce Young's 6'3", 230, Thomas, like, there's no question of who's being picked first, right? Because Young comes from a better program slightly. Ohio State's a great program. And he's had more production. He's played in bigger games. He played a title game last year. Although honestly, both Stroud and Young have taken Georgia down to the wire in a college football playoff game the last 2 years. Young, very athletic, does a lot with his legs, is very good on the move, but it's 5'10", and had to probably put one of those weights in his pants to weigh 207 at the combine, right? So what do you think about this one, Thomas?
It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy, but none of the big quarterbacks that have been taken who were shorter are that easy to take again in the role as a general manager and a head coach, right? You have to convince your owner that of course this is right, and who cares what the height is. But it is a concern. And you're projecting, of course. I mean, when you watch him, and I happen to be watching earlier on today, when you watch him, his ability to, again, we were talking about moving in the pocket, which is a big, big deal in today's world. Step up, move to the right, move to the left, have the vision that he has, the ability to quickly get rid of the ball when he needs to at all angles and levels, almost falling away. Sometimes probably more than I'd like to see, right? Times I see him falling away kind of off balance a little bit, but completing a hell of a lot of passes that you might think you wouldn't. So I look at that and I daydream again about having a smaller, more athletic quarterback like this in today's world. I would be much more apt to think about this in today's world than back in 2008, right? I was so gung-ho, just to shed a little bit of light, my first quarterback ever, first pick ever as a general manager, I was going to get prototypical. I was going to get tall, stand in the pocket, tough enough, deal with it, enough movement, like adequate movement, which we all know Matt was never lauded for that movement. That was big for me. In today's world, I would be much more apt to look down this laneway, to be honest with you now. That said, like anyone, that's a big choice for you. You're hanging everything on someone who has some limitations, of course, and then the height, like you said. There's going to be balls knocked down in the NFL. We have a different situation set up when the players are, obviously the defenders are coming upfield, right? Not obviously, he's played against fantastic talent. So I am, of course, concerned, and yet he's one of the smaller guys or shorter guys over the years that I've been less concerned about. But maybe that's just more my traditional side of potentially being around quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that there are instruments that teams can use to avoid some of the problems that small quarterbacks have. I mean, I do get a little concerned that, Bryce Young threw almost as many passes last season that were over 20 yards down the middle of the field, 70, than he threw in the 10 to 19 range, 77. Part of that, I think, is the talent around him. Like, if you're playing for Alabama, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you let that thing go over the middle. But like, we've seen this with Russell Wilson, right? We've seen this, at times with Baker Mayfield, another shorter quarterback. We've seen this at times. If you look, I think Kyler Murray's had a pretty good career so far. He's probably not worth $46 million now, but he had a good career. But you look at the passing patterns, and it's like you have to be able to get a basket every once in a while over the middle of the field. And when you are that height, it's just difficult. Like, you can scheme those things up through play action, and somebody's talking about RPOs in the chat. Like, you can do all those things, but when it's 3rd and 7 and you got to drop back to pass, you got to, like, you don't want to necessarily have to scheme pockets such that your quarterback can see the middle of the field because you helped him. It's better that he just sees over the line of scrimmage. Now, again, to your point, like, his movement. And here's a cool stat that I pulled up. He averaged more yards per attempt last year, 9.3 when pressured, than he did when clean. And he had he had just one turnover worthy play when clean. I also like his statistics when you break them up are very good, right? Like,
Yes.
when he's pressured, he has movement that he can avoid, that kind of stuff. The one I worry about, and this is just like my long-standing love of the game, when I look at slender quarterbacks, I look at, obviously Murray's been injured a lot, and that has hurt the Cardinals. Mayfield was injured, and like Mayfield was on his way to being okay. I thought he had the Chiefs on the ropes in the playoffs, and and then he got injured in 2021, and he was terrible. And all the way back to like Jim McMahon, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a winner, an absolute guy that set all the records at BYU. Right? We talk about Lavelle Edwards, we talk about Paul Saban's, godfather of football. And when he got to the pros, he just got beat up too much, right? And he still was effective, but he'd start 12 games a year, and like, even all the way to Teddy Bridgewater, a guy who was, again, a 32nd overall pick, was on his way to being pretty good, and has just been dealt with injuries because he's a smaller guy. So, if you buy into Bryce Young as your quarterback, Thomas, it comes with some assumptions, right? We talk about our product assumptions. The assumptions have to be that you got to protect the guy, right? And if you spend a lot on your offensive line with Bryce Young, Thomas, like, it has to come at the expense of your defense or your wide receivers. And do you think that that's a gamble worth making, given all the positives we've talked about so far?
I do. And I just got kicked off, and I'm sorry, I'm back off. Can you repeat the back end of that question?
Yeah. So no worries. Basically, if you have Bryce Young, you are going to have to invest in the offensive line. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts around. Like, you cannot do what the Cardinals did, frankly, and kind of assume that his movement skills will make up for it. You have to create the wall around him. And that's going to come at the expense of wide receivers or defense. Is that a gamble you're willing to make with a guy who's being picked 1-1?
It is a gamble. I mean, again, all these things you would wish that you weren't having to worry about any of this. And you would wish that you had a complete open slate and creativity to run any offense that you wanted. The reality is that's not necessarily the case, right? So with an investment like this, it takes a lot. There's a lot involved with this. And you could reap the benefits of having someone who has the awareness and the movement in the pocket. Again, I keep bringing this up. Those latter years of being around, not being able to have that upper echelon ability to adapt when it becomes second and third, mainly third down and 3rd and 7, 9, whatever it is. My God, that is a really good feeling, knowing that you can, tuck the ball and run, or adjust and make plays outside of, the general interior of the pocket. That is a really important thing. So, again, the more that I think about the size, which is a concern, I love so much more about this player. And of course, this is going to be what's going to be difficult. Here's Carolina. They have to make a very, very big decision on this. This is not easy for Scott Fitter and Frank Reich, when you're thinking about it, right? More Scott, right? Scott's in a situation. He's been there for a while where they have to make a decision on a quarterback, potentially. This could be one that they're considering. And, there's a lot on his plate, of course, to make this big time decision.
Yeah, for sure. And with both Young and Stroud, those guys are going to start probably from day one. And so that adds a level of complexity to it, because their warts, and they're going to be able to work through them, but their warts are going to be there from day one, much like Matt's were. And Matt threw a touchdown, 75 yards in his first play, but he was good from the beginning, but you work through that.